Hello, dear students. This video I am going to upload for MA previous students. This is on Wordsworth's The Prelude, and Wordsworth is supposed to be the proprietor of Romanticism. Romanticism is a school of writers, that is a movement that is regarded as the golden era of poetry, English poetry, because of certain genuine reasons. There was a paradigm shift from the preceding period, that was Pope's and Dryden's period, where the reasoned verses were written, and Wordsworth came forward with a thesis that not only the subject matter but the language of poetry must be completely changed. There, Wordsworth is trying to democratize the concept of the subject matter of poetry, and he is of the opinion that poetry should be written where the common man should be talked about, because poetry should go to the last man of the society, people who are on the margin of the society. That way we can say the greatest contribution of Wordsworth is democratizing poetry and bringing into poetry and its subject matter from city. There is a shift to countryside, because he believed in the simplicity. That idea he derived from Rousseau and other philosophers. As I told you that lots of philosophical impacts were there on him, like Spinoza, Kant, and Locke, and Hartley, Berkeley, whatever philosophers, Godwin, Platonism. So he derived views from all these sources and experienced it himself, and whatever was the outcome of his experience, on the basis of that he has tried to deal these things in poetry. So the first major step that is taken by Wordsworth is to bring poetry, the vigor in poetry, the simplicity in poetry, and the feeling and imagination, feeling and emotion that was completely lacking in the preceding age of Pope and Wordsworth. You will find that emotion, dry emotionalism is there. There is no emotion to be found in their poetry. And I have told you time and again that feeling, emotion, and passion are the key materials of poetry. So there was a complete lack of it. In Wordsworth, you will come to know that the divinization that he is doing of nature, somewhere the elementary passion he subscribes, and he is of the opinion that when a rustic, why he champions for the rustic people in poetry, rustic characters in poetry, he is of the opinion that the rustic people speak without blinkers. They have no impersonation. They directly communicate from the heart, and something that is coming out from the heart is having greater degree of force and greater degree of impact, because poetry is heart to heart communication. Poetry takes birth in heart, reaches the heart of the readers directly. So his idea of simplicity, or bringing about the subject matter in his characters that he has taken, invariably he talks about the village people. The simple reason is there must be some sort of force, fervor, enthusiasm, feeling, and passion, and it should be directly coming from the heart, without any sort of duplicacy. As city bred people are there, they are having lots of duplicacy about them, hypocrisy about them. So he made a major shift that from urban middle class or bureaucratic circle, poetry was going to depict the common man. And it was the attempt of Wordsworth that everyone should read poetry, because poets are having foresight, and they are somewhere gifted individuals. They can think, they can see, they can understand those points which are far beyond to be understood by the common man. That is why he thought that it is very imperative to make poetry reach the last man of the society, because poetry can bring about wholesale change among the people. Poetry can transfer, poetry can transmit great ideas, and great ideas are needed for each and all, and it can transfuse morality. It can transfuse lots of great ideas among the people, and poetry is in a way mokshadayini in our tradition. Why this is mokshadayini? Because it is a kind of thing by which the poets transfer pleasure, and in that pleasant state of mind, man is able to encounter divinity. So somewhere it transforms. Poetry is having the power to transform, to transport. So these were the concepts of Wordsworth, and he thought that poets are doing a great job, and they can bring moral uprightness among the people by their attempt. So poetry should reach the last man. How the common man will be able to understand and read poetry? They will understand and read poetry only when the poetry is written in common language. That is why he says that there is hardly any difference between the language of prose and that of metrical composition. His main attempt was to topple down the concept of poetry writing, the kind of phraseology that was prevalent in the preceding age, that is the age of Pope and Dryden. So that was one deliberate attempt. Actually, when you apply these theories to his poetry, you will find that the same is not the case. His poems are not written in so easy a language, and but why he said so? He said this thing in order to revolutionize the language, because earlier there was too much emphasis on uncommon words and on certain unique coinages, and that created difficulty in understanding those things. So Wordsworth wanted that poetry should be written in a language that is very easily understandable to the last man of the society, the uncultured, uneducated, less educated people, and the language spoken by the common man, that is having greater force and directness. Its impurities must be improved upon, and then it should be used in poetry. So it is very simple, but critics frown upon him. Even Coleridge has criticized him very bitterly about his idea of poetic language. That is another matter. But why he said so? As I think, he wanted that the revolutionary, radical kind of language, use of language must be there, and that is the reason he has said so. That is a kind of hyperbole, you can say. Then we have to understand that it was the first time after Elizabethan era that philosophy was going to be introduced in poetry. Whether it was the philosophy of pantheism or Platonism, new Platonism that you had find in Shelley, that transmigration of soul after the death, body remains here and the soul goes and gets mixed with greater entity, that is God. So that Platonism is to be found in Wordsworth. Godwinism is to be found in Wordsworth, because he was influenced. He was very adoptive kind of a person, and Coleridge himself said that after Milton and Shakespeare, Wordsworth is the most imaginative kind of poet. As far as his imaginative faculty is there can be hardly any greater tribute to him than this statement of Coleridge's friend, who has been very critical about his theory of language and theory of poetry. But here he has appreciated him, and he observes that as far as the imaginative nature of poetry, imagination is concerned, you can find it in abundance in Wordsworth. And one of the critics has said that he is the intellectual child of Rousseau. So Rousseau, Kant, Locke, and Godwin, Hartley, Berkeley, every philosopher that was there before Wordsworth, he adopted their ideas and somewhere he reflected them. Like Platonism, he has reflected in his philosophy that what is Platonism? There are two kinds of souls. One is divisible soul and one is indivisible soul. The undivisible soul or indivisible soul is larger entity, that is God, and the divisible soul is that from which we are made of, right? So human body is made of divisible soul, that is a part and parcel, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that out of my two prakritis this universe has been created. Out of my inferior prakriti the visible world is created, and out of my superior prakriti, that is superior aspect of mine, the soul is created, the invisible, the energy is created, and after the death this energy that is there in us, that is given to us, gets one with the larger entity, that is Kabir Das's that statement, Phuta जल बीच कुंभ कुंभ बीच जल है फूटा कुंभ जल जल ही समाना. So we are like water in a pot, and the larger entity, that is the larger soul, that is pond, and after we are put there in the pond, until we are until the pot is intact, we are separate from that larger entity. As the pot is crashed, the water from the pot, that is human body, the water is that soul, and that gets mixed with the larger entity. That is the concept. That is, one remains and many changes, that Shelley says in Adonais, that one remains, that is larger entity remains, and many changes. Whatever other forms of nature, forms of the divisible energy is there, that is transmigrated to the larger energy. That is there. And second thing that you have to understand, he is a great nature mystic. He identifies himself with nature. He finds that nature is the storehouse of all goodness, all morality, and he has been indebted by nature for everything, each and everything. The little nameless acts of kindness and of beauty that we indulge in, that is because of nature. So nature is a great source, is a guide, is a nurse, is a kind of philosopher that helps mankind at every step, and he doesn't see any darker spot in nature. He doesn't see any he doesn't talk about the devastation that nature creates. He is always talking about the brighter aspect of nature. Just contrary to him, the American poet Robert Frost is there, and he deals with both the things, the bright aspect as well as the darker aspect of nature. But in Wordsworth, only glorification of nature is there, and somewhere his philosophy of pantheism, nature, God and man, is all are same, all are equal. He finds the basic oneness in all, in the plants, in the trees, in the man, and in the, he says that there is a effulgent light, that is that energy, the indivisible, the divisible soul invested in us. That is why we are here. As in non-dualism, it is said that man, or this entire cosmos, is the manifestation of one God. God is one. Its manifestation, the entire globe, entire universe, is the manifestation of that one Almighty. So that is pantheism and Platonism. All these philosophical ideas are to be found reflected in the poetry of Wordsworth, and he believed in man's immense potentiality, and he also believed in the intrinsic greatness of man. Man is progressive, man is having potential, he is infallible, He is very much angelic. So all the good aspects of man can be traced in Wordsworth. That way we can say Wordsworth is a different, very different kind of a poet who is known as a worshipper of nature, but I think in entire poems of Wordsworth, man dominates. He is more a poet of man than a poet of nature, because his nature is what? Nature is divinity for him, and that divinity is being traced. That divinity is being traced in the context of human life. So human life is more important, man is more important, because he wants to impart some sort of important service through his poetry writing to mankind, so that they can improve and they can make progress in this life. And the second thing that is important for our knowledge at this level is that Wordsworth and Coleridge, they divided their courses, and in the part of Wordsworth it was decided that you will be dealing with the natural objects, natural beauty and all. So he is continuously talking of natural phenomena, and nature itself is a objective kind of a thing, because although he is labeled the charge of egotistical sublime, it is said that Wordsworth is a egotistical sublime, but when you deeply understand and underline, read between the lines of the poems of Wordsworth, you will find that he doesn't talk of himself. Through himself, he talks of general humanity, because his I, like Whitmanian I, represents the entire human race. So when he says that, oh my dear sister, please face the storm, please face the wind and let the moon shine upon you, there is divinity, and because already there is divinity in you, and this divine element, natural objects, when your body is coming in contact with them, the element of divinity will be multiplied. So we cannot say that he is talking personally about this. Or in Lucy poems, you can say, in Leech Gatherer, he never ever talks in personal terms, although he implies I and we. By implying I and we, it doesn't matter that he is concerned or he is describing about his temperament, about himself. Rather, he is talking about general humanity, because he is dwelling with human nature. Like Shakespeare is there, Shakespeare always deals with fundamental human nature, because he knows that man is mortal, his nature is immortal. So the charge of egotistical sublime that is labeled against Wordsworth, I do not subscribe this, because this is something unfair to call a person who is continuously talking about the valleys, the natural phenomenon, the river and all these things, and he becomes a kind of narrator. But the point of narration is always objective. So why he is called so much subjective, I don't understand. I don't think T.S. Eliot is right when he opposes Wordsworth for saying that he has written poems on his own subject matter. That is another matter, that Impressionism is there, and Impressionism actually, that when you see everything according to, when you judge and see everything according to your mind, that becomes impressionistic, and that everybody does. This is not the case of Wordsworth. All of us look at the world as the world appears to us. So we are having our understanding, and accordingly we understand the nature of this universe. Same is the case with Wordsworth. That is a controversial point according to me, that you must be knowing. And second thing that is important to know is Wordsworth is very intuitive kind of a person. This intuition, this reflection of creativity that is the signal is coming and going, the fleeting signal of creativity that is there to be found in this poem that he will be talking about. That is very important to understand. Intuitional poetry is different from representational poetry. 18th century poetry is a representational poetry where the poets are writing in order to show the outer reality of the world, the manners and morals of the people that they have observed in life. And here Wordsworth is trying to deal with, he tries to deal with his own understanding of the universe that is presented before his eyes. And that is by looking inward, because when you reduce yourself, when it is talked about, after reducing the self, the poet goes into, in a way, he transposes himself into another realm, going to 0 degree. He is capable of seeing, perceiving. Poet is capable of perceiving what is the common phenomena. I mean to say, when inward looking is there, through yourself, through oneself, the man is trying to look at the general human nature. So that Wordsworth has done. That is also done by Shakespeare. All the great writers, they have tried to do this. Your Mahabharata, your Ramayana, everywhere, you will find that the poet is having his own vision, like Milton is having his own vision to create paradise on the earth, and through his he is trying to translate that vision in his poetry. So Wordsworth is having his own vision of morality, vision of ethics, vision of equality, liberty and fraternity, vision of human empathy and sympathy that he is trying to deal with in his poems. So let's not make a mistake that Wordsworth has written poems on his own choices. Hardly 1 or 2 poems are there which can be said to be autobiographical. This poem, you can say, the prelude, it is generally regarded as the spiritual growth of the mind of the poet. Okay, it's all right. It is the spiritual growth of the mind of the poet Wordsworth. But do you not have the understanding what happens to a poet, how a poet becomes a poet? What are the shaping influences? How his childhood is involved? How the poet emerges from adverse circumstances? And what are the things from which the poet gets indebted? So these things are there. So this is not personal. This is not completely personal. Although he is talking about the development and spiritual growth of himself, but through that spiritual growth, through that personal account that he is presenting here, we are given to understand that, look, this is how poets are made out. This is how the creative people organize themselves, right? So that is something very necessary to understand at this level, because you are, mind you, doing your PG. He spiritualizes nature, he glorifies nature. These are the guidebook lines, everybody knows it. But what you know different, how you can defend your idea, how you can say that by writing the growth, spiritual growth, personal spiritual growth, we can say that he is giving a glimpse of the shaping of the mind of a poet in general. By describing the beauty of nature to his own, by talking about the merits of nature to his own sister and friend Dorothy, Dorothy is there, he is there, okay, it's all right. But when he says that these natural phenomenon, they are tremendous things and they are the storehouse of pleasure for our later years. So do we not get this understanding that the way it is, these natural phenomena, the natural phenomena is going to contribute to Wordsworth and Dorothy, the same way it can contribute general people. We should also regard general general phenomena of nature as storehouses of pleasure. So that information we take, we find, and in our culture, we can say that we had been in the habit of regarding river as goddess, tree as goddess, and god. Mountain, Kailash Parvat, we regard it as the abode of Lord Shankar. So that way, this is our tradition. And Wordsworth is in a way trying to do the same thing in a different manner. He is trying to make a clarion call that natural objects must be respected and they must be looked upon with reverence and with honor and respect. Why? Because they are the source of life. One corona has made us realize what is the importance and what is the power of man. All the power is subdued. All the atom bombs are of no use in the time of corona because now we are realizing the human limitation. Earlier, human beings were having lots of ego. We can do this, we can do that. No, nothing. We can do nothing. So this concept, this kind of teaching comes from poetry. That is why he said that poetry is the breath and finer spirit of all knowledge. Breath and finer spirit of all knowledge. All the knowledge means philosophy, psychology, sociology, history. The breadth and finer, whatever the best part of all these branches of knowledge is there, that you can find in poetry. So poetry is something that is a very powerful medium of transforming the individual, making us realize the mysteries of life, the secrets of life. Life is a riddle, and all of us are having the burden of knowing that riddle, mind you. It is duty of all of us, every individual, to try to know that riddle, what life is. And whatever knowledge till date we have acquired about life, that is very limited. Lots of things are still to be known. Plenty of secrets of life is still remaining there to be searched out, to be researched. That is why poetry, according to Wordsworth, is having a very pivotal role to play in the life of man. So with this background, we are going to start the text, and we'll be doing the text up to 300 lines. One general idea must be there, what is there in the text, and because up to 300 lines you will get the explanation. And rest of the things you can go by the summary and all that. But up to 300 lines I will be explaining, so you can understand that this poem is not that concentrated kind of a poem. This poem is a bit haphazard. What is happening to the poet, where he has come from the city and reaching there in the forest, he is very happy and he wishes that he is going to create a great work of great poem here. So and he tries also, but the things are slipping out from his hand. He is getting the invitation that he should start the writing, and then again the creative urges are fleeting away. So these things are to be found in this poem, that we will be talking in the next video. Okay, thank you very much.